Welcome to Forum Focus. Tonight on Forum Focus, we are looking at the first 6 months of the Trump administration, renewed attention on the Epstein case, what remains hidden, why the public still doesn't have the answers that they crave on that topic, plus the very latest on Canada-U.S. relations as a new tariff deadline, of course, that is today, comes into effect as U.S. President Donald Trump and Prime Minister Mark Carney continue to fight in order to make an agreement between the two countries, both Canada and the United States, on the topic that has really been eating up the political discourse and the news cycle over the course of the past few weeks. Joining us now to discuss exactly that is Rob Russo. He is the Canadian correspondent for The Economist and, of course, also served as the bureau chief on Parliament Hill for CBC News for some time. Rob, thanks so much for joining us.
My pleasure, Wyatt.
So perhaps let's just start out on that trade deal that, is not yet made, but we're seeing the Trump administration making a number of different deals with a number of countries, the Philippines, Cambodia, a number of other examples as well. Donald Trump has suggested that he's okay if, a deal is not reached. He had said at one point that Canada might just have to be an example of a country that ends up paying tariffs. Is that something that should, alarm Canadians, the fact that we don't have a deal and it's looking like we might not have a deal?
We'll see. We're in overtime. We're not in overtime yet, but we're in the last minute of the regularly scheduled game, and the talks could go in overtime. We are in a situation where if we are going to go ahead without a deal, it would, in effect, mean that we're in some sort of trade war. How aggressively waged that war might be is still to be determined. But we would be, among our G7 allies, alone in that trade war. The other G7 allies, Japan, the Europeans, have all come to some kind of a deal with the United States. Lots of nebulous details in those deals. But one thing is clear. President Trump wants a baseline of 15% tariffs on them. Now, an important distinction between us and our European allies and others who've signed these deals, including South Korea, is that we have the Canada-U.S.-Mexico Free Trade Agreement, which would mean that the lion's share, the great majority of our trade, would still be tariff-free as long as it is compliant with that agreement. So in effect, we would have a lower rate of tariffs on our goods, except for the sections of our economy that are getting hammered right now, including steel, aluminum, and the auto sector, which is being hobbled by the uncertainty of it all.
And in the United States, Donald Trump had been facing a lot of criticism, obviously from Democrats, but even from some Republicans, people like Rand Paul perhaps being among the most notable there for implementing these tariffs. But in recent days, if you listen to people like even the Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, he certainly has, some pretty strong rhetoric with respect to how he feels the tariffs are going. He was on Fox News last night talking about how successful they've been. Is there any truth that from an American perspective, anyways, they're having, some type of positive benefits?
Well, yet to be determined whether or not they have positive benefits on the U.S. economy. Look, I don't think anybody is telling Americans the bald truth. The bald truth is that, in Canada, we have the GST. We have a value-added tax called the Goods and Services Tax. In essence, Americans are going to be paying their version of a value-added tax. They are about to get a tax increase. I understand that President Trump has just cut taxes for Americans, but he's going to add taxes on them unless U.S. corporations absorb all of the costs of tariffs. And we know they can't do that. They can't do that in a sustained way. So they're about to get a tax increase in the United States. As to the impact that will have on the economy, again, it's been attenuated the last 2 or 3 months because a lot of the larger corporations stocked up on tariff-free goods in a huge way before we got to this point. But I don't know of very many serious economists who don't believe that tariffs are going to lead to at least a short-term sort of decrease in economic activity. While everybody figures out what's going on, just the fact that there's this uncertainty alone means billions and billions of dollars are on the sidelines.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back with Rob Russo right after this. Stay with us. We'll be right back.